How bad was the Great Plague of 1665? Nobody in the Renaissance period really believed the plague had gone away forever. People had read about how the Black Death of 1349 had killed off nearly half of England's population in just over 2 years. The signs of plague were well known and were feared by old and young, rich and poor alike. In the early summer of 1665, there was gossip about people breaking out with buboes and others with fever and coughing up blood. People closed their doors and avoided the sick, especially in the overcrowded and crooked streets of London. The plague was back and was about to once again burn its way through a terrified population of the capital city. The plague virus of 1665 was the same as the devastating one of 1349. It killed the young and the old especially fast. There was still not a cure for it, and no one really understood where it had come from or what caused it. People still believed plague was a punishment sent from God wanting to rid the world of sin. Others blamed supernatural forces for it, such as the presence of a comet or strange signs in the sky with the positioning of the planets. But more people argued that it must come from miasma, the foul, bad air from countless piles of waste in the streets. While many beliefs about the cause of the plague were similar to the medieval period, thankfully in 1665 there was better understanding of how to stop the plague spreading. Once cases of plague were confirmed, the authorities in London acted swiftly. The plague orders were issued to stop people mixing. Taverns and theatres were closed. Stray cats and dogs were killed, and plague victims were forced into quarantine or lockdown. No one with symptoms of the plague, like a fever or the dreaded buboes, was allowed out. Victims' homes were padlocked, with them and their family members shut inside. A red cross was painted on the door to warn neighbours and passers-by to stay away. Watchmen were employed to check that nobody came in or out of these locked homes, especially for the plague nurses who brought the sick food that was paid for by the authorities. In other places outside of London, such as the village of Eyam in Derbyshire, sometimes the whole community quarantined themselves to stop the disease from spreading. No one in and no one allowed out. Despite hundreds of deaths, quarantine worked. Plague did not spread outside of Eyam. London too was in a state of lockdown, with only the rich able to flee, as they could afford to pay a doctor for a medical certificate of good health which allowed them to escape the city. It was London's poor who suffered the most. A grand total around 100,000 died in London. But unlike the Black Death before, the Great Plague did not kill anything like as many people overall. Actions like the plague orders possibly saved thousands from dying. The authorities also better understood how plague was spread from person to person, so special hospitals, called pest houses, were built to house plague victims away from the population. But people were still none the wiser about the root cause of the disease, which we now understand to be germs. Treatments too didn't cure victims, and at best only gave some short-term relief to the unfortunate ones suffering from the painful effects of the disease. Key learning. Less people died during the Great Plague of 1665 compared to the Black Death of 1349. This was mainly because more measures were quickly put into place to stop it spreading, such as the very strict plague orders. Many people still believe that God was punishing people with plague, or that it was spread by bad air or miasma from decaying waste.